I'm bored. Let's talk about the beginning of the end of free speech in the United States of America. All right, so unless you've been living under a rock the last couple days, you will know that Jimmy Kimmel's show was taken off the air after his monologue where he talked about the Charlie Kirk incident and the reaction from MAGA over the weekend, right after the incident happened. We're not going to dive into the Charlie Kirk stuff. Like I said, I'm not going to do that on the channel, but I do want to talk about what this means for free speech and why I believe the government, and a lot of people believe the government, has gone too far this time. So we see today there's an update. Jimmy Kimmel actually went to visit his lawyer's office in Los Angeles. And this is because, just like many of us, we see this as a clear overreach of the government. The FCC, which is supposed to be an independent portion of the executive branch, is now being weaponized by the White House to go after entertainment and people who speak out against MAGA. Now, this isn't like speaking out against Democrats, Republicans, specifically just MAGA, which isn't even really its own political party. It's just an extension of the conservative party, of the Republican Party. And so this is 100% cut and dry a free speech issue. Free speech exists to protect unpopular speech, unpopular opinions. That's why it's there. It's there to protect things like comedy. So like Dave Chappelle or Roseanne Barr, any of these other people, it exists to protect those people from the government getting involved in what they're allowed to say. Now, I know you've seen a lot of stories out there with people trying to conflate this situation with other situations. Even the Stephen Colbert stuff, like they've tried to put these two things side by side. This one is very, very different. And I'm going to explain to you very quickly why this is actually a free speech issue versus everything else that you've heard out there. So since the FCC was the way they submit things to get things done has changed as of this year, because Donald Trump came in and said, hey, anything the FCC does has to go through the White House now. That started earlier this year. That means that everything they do has to be vetted by the White House, or the White House could possibly tell them to do something, depending on how those things work. Either way, it's very clear that Brendan Carr, who is the head of the FCC, is doing things in a slimy, scummy way. And I hate to say I told you so, but this is all part of that Project 2025 playbook. He's even been on Twitter. Matter of fact, I think I have a bookmark. Let's look at this. So Kevin McHale here says this was all in Project 2025, by the way. And then Brendan Carr, the head of the FCC, puts this as a response. Kevin goes, the head of the FCC seems like a totally normal guy. Thanks for confirming what we already know. So they're not even hiding this anymore. This isn't a big secret. So everybody who went on the defense for this last year and kept saying, this is not what they're about, they're not going to do this, Trump has nothing to do with Project 2025. Literally, we were right again. We were right again about this. And now we have the head of the FCC just coming out and saying it, threatening to block mergers of companies, offering incentives for companies to do this by playing ball with the White House and doing things with the White House. Maybe we'll approve your merger. And this is the issue with the Kimmel situation, is that Nexstar, Sinclair, two of these outlets that have, I think, around 39% of all TV access in the country, they are capped out. They're capped out as much as they can, in terms of like what they can acquire for their company based on the current rules and regulations. They are courting Brendan and the FCC. They're courting them to try and get them to change that so they can acquire more space. And they're saying, hey, look, we're going to play ball with you. We will do what you want by forcing these companies, ABC, Disney, whatever, to bend to the will of the government if you allow us to acquire more growth in the United States, more than what you allow now, which is what they're doing. Not to mention the FCC threatened to pull license from ABC if this didn't happen, if actions were not taken. All of this is very different from any other situation we've seen where a show was pulled off the air, or an actor or a director or writer or something was let go from a project. This is very different. This is clearly government interference into free speech. That is clearly what is going on here. This is going to be a very important case. Honestly, if this ends up going further than this, and they don't reach some sort of agreement outside of this, this is going to be a very important case. I also want to point out some of the stipulations they had for Jimmy Kimmel here was that he had to apologize to the family and to the government, to MAGA, about this, publicly apologize, and donate money to Turning Point USA. That was part of the deal to get the show back on the air immediately, was to go to do this on the next airing of the show or whatever. And he didn't do it, which good for him. You shouldn't, because it's a free speech issue. If he would have bent the knee to this, like some of these other people have done, you would have shown the government that we're willing to do this to play ball. And I'm glad that he's not. And this is affecting Disney as well. People out there are going, you know, Disney, you dropped the ball on this. You didn't fight for this. Canceling their Disney Plus subscription, ESPN, Hulu, canceling their trips to Disney. We're seeing like picketing and boycotting of Disney right outside of their studios, outside of their buildings, things like that. Hollywood is reacting to this. We have actual people like Pedro Pascal and Tatiana Maslany are all sort of speaking out against this. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting here, but there's a lot of people who are speaking out against this because, and even talk show hosts themselves are talking about this. The View, who is notoriously known for being very critical of the president, was very quiet about this because I'm sure they were probably told, oh, they're going to come after us if you say something. But it doesn't matter because Trump still said, and he said this right after this happened, he's going to start going after people who are doing this. And he's to take a look at like the View and stuff. So he's admitting that this is the government going after people. All of these things are in the public. He's saying this publicly. The way they're doing this, the nerve and the audacity they have to say these things publicly is going to end up in court, and it's going to be hard for them to argue this. Now, Trump even knows this. He's aware of this because just the other day he was asked at a press briefing. That I can't remember what day it was. It was this past week. He was asked about like pride flags and trans flags. Would he be willing to ban those? And he goes, I would be willing to do it, but you know, it's a free speech thing and it would get struck down or whatever. So he knows this. He understands this. So what he's doing is he's trying to see how much he can get out of someone to avoid going to court with them over something like this. So this is why it's very important that Jimmy Kimmel actually follows through and goes to court on this so we can find out what they would say about it. I also want to point out, you're going to see articles like this one here where it goes, Jimmy Kimmel's feature at ABC was already up in the air before Charlie Kirk Upwar's contract came to a close. This is not the same thing. This is kind of bullshit, actually, because even if the contract was up in the air, this was a direct response to what he said on his monologue. It's a direct response. The FCC is involved. Trump is involved. This is directly responding to that. So this doesn't matter. Ignore articles like this. None of this matters. Anybody saying anything like this, none of this matters. This is not why. And even they came out like, I think 24 hours afterwards. They're like, well, it wasn't because of that. No, this is not the reason why. It was directly in response to his comments about the monologue where he talked about Charlie in it and MAGA, more specifically about MAGA. But anybody saying anything like this, ignore this. This means nothing. This means nothing at all. We're also seeing over here that people on YouTube are going crazy over this as well, where we got Nerdrotic with Jimmy crying in there. Jimmy Kimmel canceled Disney pulls plug after Charlie Kirk comment. You shouldn't be cheering this on. You guys are free speech guys. You are anti-cancel culture. You are anti-government overreach. You're anti-studio. So I guess Disney's good now because they're the ones that took him off the air. Like everything that you guys are supposed to be against, you should be supporting here. And there are people on the right, like I think Ted Cruz has gone on record saying that this is wrong. Several other Republicans have gone on record saying this is wrong. Like other people, commentators in the space have said that it's wrong. People realize that this is a free speech violation. It literally is. And the issue with this for everyone is that if the shoe were on the other foot, let's take a look at the Gina Carano situation, okay? So Gina Carano, and a lot of people try to compare this to the Gina Carano situation. It's not the same, right? Gina Carano, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, she was let go because of stuff going on inside Disney, whatever they decided to do with this. The president, the FCC, the any other networks out there connected to projects or whatever, they were not putting pressure on Disney to do anything, or Lucasfilm. That was on them. Now, you can agree or disagree with it. You can call it cancel culture, whatever you want to call it. It is not the same as this. And most of the other situations, at least as far as I've looked into them, are not the same as this. We have the president speaking out about this, who's been pushing for this for a while. We have the FCC and the head of the FCC admitting that this was them, putting pressure on them. These things are not the same. This situation individually is different from all of them, whether it's conservative, liberal, whatever you want to call it. This is a very different situation. If the shoe were on the other foot and Biden would have done this with people from Fox News, can you imagine if Biden would have told the FCC to go and cancel shows on Fox News? Could you imagine what the outcry would have been? Could you imagine? And again, I want to remind people the First Amendment doesn't exist for things you say that everyone agrees with. That's not what that means. If you say something with the First Amendment that the general public is going to agree with, it doesn't need to be protected. When you're saying something that you believe, like if you believe the earth is flat, stupid as I think that is, if you believe that, you should be allowed to say that. You should be allowed to talk about that. If you believe that the moon is inhabited by cat people, you should be able to say that. Even if I don't believe it, you should be allowed to say it. If you don't agree with Biden, if you don't agree with, like, you should be allowed to say these things. You should be. Even if I don't agree with them, you should be allowed to say them. That is the reason why the First Amendment exists. If someone says something the government doesn't like and they shut them down, that is a direct violation of the First Amendment. And you can cry about it to your mama in the comments.